That's not my business.
Hello and welcome to yet another Couch Combat devlog. I'm making a game called Couch Combat. It's a split-screen first-person shooter with smooth movement, fast, frantic games, and a simple, low-poly art style. In this devlog, I will be starting from where I left off last episode, and I will finish by releasing a brand new free update for the game on itch.io. In the last devlog, I mostly focused on introducing some new mechanics to make combat more interesting. These mechanics were punching and throwables. I also began making some brand new stages to play in a new oriental style. So that's where I'm starting. The game has had a very flat and basic art style since the very beginning. The blocks were actually inspired by Stick Fight the game, though to be fair, most of this game is inspired by Stick Fight. But anyways, before I really get started making the 3 stages that I needed for the game, I want to finalize the art style. Last devlog, I replaced the ground with low poly terrain that I made in a very complicated system by importing it into Blender and then back into Unity like 20 times. But in the end, I wasn't really happy with it. Not only did it not look great, the terrain wasn't nearly as fun to play on as the old flat boxes were. So I decided to scratch that and go for a different look yet again. I first tried just going back to the boxes but making them all green, and then trying to add like stones to make a sort of castle or fort or something. It turned out pretty bad. But I ended up with a lot more rock models after trying this, so it wasn't all bad. I found a tutorial for this low poly cliff, and I decided that I wanted to make that. It has flat ground on top of it, which makes the game easier to move on, but the sides of the block look much nicer. I also tried adding grass to the top of the blocks for like the 10th time, but it looked bad, so I just scrapped it, probably for the last time. But it was around this time that I began to encounter an issue. While I play the game, sometimes it'll just crash seemingly out of nowhere. But I decided to finish up making all the content and then later fix this issue. It was strange and very annoying as I had to close Unity every single time that it occurred. Luckily for me, for some reason Unity would take like 10 seconds to reopen after this and like the usual 10 minutes it takes to open, so it wasn't too bad. I'm finally happy with the low poly art style now, and while it's not perfect, it's definitely a lot better than the sort of terrain mixed with flat boxes that I had going on in the last devlog. I started putting together all the stages. My workflow for this was pretty simple. I just exported the Pro Builder shapes from Unity to a 3D model, and then opened that model in Blender. Then I used the Pro Builder as a base to make a model of the stage. It was a fairly repetitive and long process, but it looks so much nicer that it's honestly worth the time. So I got to work completely remodeling the first stage. I added a few improvements as well, like modeling a bridge as well as making some stairs for the ramps. I added a randomized effects to the stairs to make them look more natural and kind of like they are made out of stone bricks, and I like how it turned out. After the first stage, I put together a workflow for making stages that I followed for the second and third one. Step 1, I plan out the level in my notebook. I plan out routes around the stage and important stuff like high ground or set pieces. Then step 2, I look at these plans and make any new needed models or props for them in Blender. This can be anything from just a few new rock variations to bigger things like trees. Step 3 is just making the base for the level using Pro Builder and playtesting it in Unity. I do some of the decoration and iterate on my original design for the stage some here. Step 4 is where I finally import the Pro Builder models into Blender and fancy them up. And finally, step 5 is where I bring these new models into Unity and polish everything up. I've been trying to lean more into the strengths of the movement system with these new stages. Personally, I think it's gone pretty well. There are lots of interesting routes that you can take along the stages. Like, if you time it right on the first stage, you can jump all the way from one cliff onto an arch to the other cliff. You can also get on top of the rock from the third stage, or climb onto the walls on any stage for a quick vantage point. Anyways, this was all just basically a really long way to say that I made the second level, which is the old first level, but better. And then I took a break from level creation for just a bit to focus on polishing up player movement. It feels pretty good most of the time, but I need to fix a few things. First off, sliding gives you too much of a boost in speed, and this makes it so that you can't really slide down ramps because you kind of just boost over them. To fix this, I actually increased the base movement speed, which I felt was just a bit too slow, decreased the slide boost, and basically completely removed any friction from sliding. This is better, but I still feel like sliding might need a bit more of an overhaul sometime in the future. Getting back to stage design, I made the third stage in Pro Builder based on a sketch I made last devlog. Then I went through the full process and completed the third stage. It's a new design based around 2 high points on opposite ends of the stage and a little walled off area with rocks and an arch. Now that the stages were mostly complete, it was time to get down to really tying off and finishing things. I started off following a tutorial made by LMH Poly, who by the way makes really good particle effect tutorials. It made a leaf falling particle effect for the cherry blossom tree. I think this helped combat the fact that the tree looks worse from below than on top. I went back to throwables in Melee and decided to try to fix them. First off, I just made the throwables actually throw out the center of the screen. Then I got to work trying to fix the issue that crashed the editor because I was getting very tired of restarting Unity. As I suspected, the issue was in the pickup spawning script, as whenever I removed it, the game would stop crashing, so I figured it was an issue with the for statement, as those can get stuck in infinite loops, so I just removed it. I thought this fixed it at first, but it didn't. I had no idea what the issue was, or if it was even in the pickup spawner at this point, so I decided to see if it was actually an issue with the editor. So to do this, I simply had to export a build of the game. Oh. When I tried to build the game, I got tons of errors. After trying to fix this for like forever, I found out that some of the plugins that I had were causing issues, namely the one that let me export Pro Builder into 3D models. This was frustrating, as the script wasn't actually used in a game, and more so just as a tool to help me in the editor. I decided to just send it to a zip file, that way I could save it for later, and that fixed the issue. So I guess I have to put it into a zip file every time I want to export the game now. And yeah, the game still crashed randomly in the build, so it was definitely an issue with the game, not with Unity. I took a break from bug fixing and worked on melee attacks. I didn't actually deal damage and knock back the player is punching. The damaging works fine, but the knockback is a little bit janky. Sometimes it works, sometimes the player flies in the wrong direction, and sometimes the punch player flies completely out of this dimension. You can get into some pretty strange flying fights with another player if you both just spam melee. I'm gonna fix this soon, but it's actually pretty fun, so I might add a melee weapon that does this in the future. I finally got down to business and decided to fix this bug. I realized that the issue was definitely still in the pickup spawning script, but I wasn't sure where. But randomly out of nowhere, I realized what the issue was. Before I spawn the actual pickup, I raycast down to check if it's spawning on solid ground, and this uses a for statement because it's supposed to repeat until it finds a place. But it actually just checks the same place infinitely, meaning that if the random position that it raycasts is off the map, then it crashes. So I just made it pick a new random position for each time that it raycasts until it finds a solid surface. That was it fixed it. So after fixing that really stupid crash, the game is basically ready, so I began to make the itch.io page. I made a cover for it first. I used Photoshop and Blender to make one that is kinda goofy, but about 10 times better than the old cover, which was just so bad. I also added some new settings, the graphics quality settings. I realized after releasing that these don't actually change anything, which sucks, so I need to fix them soon, but I also added more sounds and just much more flexible sensitivity settings. Then I polished everything up and exported for Windows, Macs, and Linux as well, because I was feeling generous. If anybody actually uses Linux, then please try out the game and comment down below if it works, because I have no idea. Finally, on February 20th, I uploaded the game to itch.io and completed the page. I'm really proud of the latest build of this game, and while it is still quite unfinished, it is already quite a bit more fun to play with friends than it used to be. You can get it for free if you click on the link in the description below, although you do need at least one controller and 2 people to play. Or I guess you could just play against yourself, but, you know. Thanks for watching, be sure to subscribe to follow the development of Couch Combat or whatever. Bye.